Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
He's too busy chatting. Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast. We look back on a relatively quiet week of motor racing, but the MotoGPs were out at the Circuit of Americas. Superbike started in Portugal, and NASCAR were bashing bumpers around Martinsville.
You never read my script. I give you these bullet points. You never read them before you read them live on YouTube.
I'm very busy. But
it's Superbikes didn't start in Portugal.
Oh, they
started in Australia.
Do you know what? I did read it. I did, but the problem is my eyes are going. I need to get some glasses, but I need to go to Specsavers. So they start. Well, Superbike started in Portugal.
Too late
let's
now.
Talk. Let's talk about.
You're not going to have a retake. So get away
Let's talk about Red Bull. Let's talk about Red Bull, and in particular, one young driver, Liam Lawson. Well, another driver, Yuki Tsunoda, as well. So, yes, it's all kind of kicked off as
so
no
many
surprises,
opinions.
really.
So many opinions coming. Apparently, Max thought he should have stayed, and Gunter Steiner, I forget what he said, which way he went. Gunter's, you notice now, there's another tweet today on Motorsport. Gunter is everywhere now. It's with headlines. Formula One boss says McLarens need to watch out. That's this morning's highlight. And he's just coming up with quotes just to stir the pot, as I probably would if I was him, just for fun. But yeah, it was. I mean, we all knew it had to go to Yuki, and everybody's saying it was too soon. And I can't believe the fuss a lot of people have made. Because it's saving Liam. If they left Liam in there, he'd be absolutely. They all saying, "Oh, go to a track he knows." In modern Formula One, that makes very little difference. If you've been on the simulated yourself to death for about 5 weeks, new tracks aren't a big surprise. I don't think Liam would have done any better. Do you?
Nah, I think it just didn't gel with it, did he? I mean, everybody's spoken about it. We've spoken about it many times. How difficult that car is to drive. It's all set up for Max. Can't believe they can't make it more specific for the second driver. But Yuki's the man. He's got to be the man. And,
I agree.
And if anyone knows Suzuka, I know Liam Lawson spent a lot of time there in Super Formula, but it's Yuki's home Grand Prix. Imagine what it's going to be like.
Well, apparently people are saying he's actually looking more relaxed. It's like a weight off his shoulders. The deal has finally been done. Instead of sort of saying, why didn't I get the drive? Why didn't I get the drive? And of course, I was reminded that another incredible disbelief as to why they chose Liam is this is their last year with Honda. And of course, Yuki's Honda money that he's paid, Honda have paid billions to Red Bull in making engines and stuff. And so even another unfathomable disbelief that they didn't put Yuki in for the last year of Honda engines. And he's there now. And Marco says it is for the rest of the year.
It's interesting you say
last
that,
words.
Because I thought the reason that he's not is the complete opposite to you. I thought he's not there because they're getting rid of Honda, so now they don't need to appease Honda.
Well, true, yeah. But as a sort of thank you, the PR they'll get in Japan this weekend, as long as it goes reasonable. I've got questions. We're gonna score on my famous scoring board now. This is just a yes or no. Your first question: will he crash before the race? Will he crash? No crashing in FP1.
He will spin. He will spin.
But nothing big.
No,
I agree with you.
Hopefully not. Right. Suzuka's very tight.
I know. So now, how far is he going to qualify behind Max?
5 to 6 tenths. What do you think?
No, I'm going 0.3. I'm going down to 0.3.
Okay, I'll edge on your side of caution. I'll go with 0.5.
Well, what do you think? Liam was about 1 second, wasn't he? 0.7, 0.8.
That's what I mean. So I think half as fast as Liam.
Well, at least the good news is the weather. It might rain, 50% rain on race day, but luckily on the
Yuki will not want rain. He will not want rain at all. So have you still got any more in your questionnaire, or can I ask you some questions?
No, those are the only two. Those are the competitions between you and me. But we both agree he's not going to crash. I don't think he's going to crash. I think he'll be on it. And he'll be
okay. So you haven't asked the $1 million question. Where is he going to finish in relation to Max?
Well, that's, whether, but is it wet conditions or dry? So there's two,
But you didn't have to hang on a minute. So you want a whole analysis when I'm asking you a question. You ask me a question, so I just answer you. Bang, off the cuff.
One lap result is different from a 2 hour result.
Where's Max going to finish and where's Yuki going to finish on Sunday?
4th and 8th.
Ooh, 8th, top 10. That's tough nowadays.
10. Right, that's I'm adding that to our results. 4th and 8th for TN.
I can't see.
Where are you putting them then?
I think 11th for. I think Max 3rd.
Right.
You can't write Max off even in.
No. Okay, 11th. Okay, you're on the
11th. We need to review this because I inevitably win most of these competitions, and we never review them because I inevitably win. And
we've got the after 4 race results to come yet. After 4 races, I've got them recorded. Our opinions of out qualifying, winning, but of course Suzuka's is fantastic.
Sorry. Before we go on about Suzuka, there's been some very strange qualifying results. Look at Lance Stroll; he's out qualified Alonso in 2 races.
It's a good point. It's a good point. He's a weird, very strange one, isn't he? Because you remember when that Turkish Grand Prix in the rain when he led for half the race.
Exceptional. There's rumours that he's going to go to WEC with Aston Martin next year.
That's what he should do.
It'd be amazing.
For goodness' sake,
especially with no disrespect. I know you're like you go on about daddy's money, but for me, I don't care about that. Go and enjoy it. Go and because it's not like every Grand Prix where you got to do 24 races a year. You can duck in and duck out. Choose the Premier, what do they call them? What do they call the Premier events? Not the Ivy League. What do they call like Daytona, Le Mans? Blue ribbon.
We managed to remember a word then, Paul. I was about to curse you for struggling to get names out of my head. The blue ribbon event. I think it's more Fernando going slower. I think maybe he's
had a bit of bad luck. He's had a bit of bad luck.
Testing and the testing didn't really go that well. And I think he's rather had a bit of the thing's still not good enough, and nobody's talking about me anymore. You know what it's like when nobody's talking about him. He doesn't like it. He tries to get to the headlines somehow.
Yeah, you've always said that. And I think the naivety of so many people saying, oh, yes, but they've got Adrian Newey, and you wait until this year. Oh, it doesn't happen that way. And it's such a massive team. He's exceptional at what he does, but there's such a big team.
And Adrian Newey says it's an engine formula next year anyway. So Newey's already not taking the blame. The rumors,
surely Yuki will be going to Aston Martin, surely, unless he has an exceptional year with Honda.
Yeah. I never know how there's more stories in them. Even the press, quite well-known journalists are saying, rumour has it that the Mercedes power package is well ahead of everybody else's. How do they? Who finds out these figures from all these secret engine testing and engine development? But that's the rumour. The Mercedes are ahead of the game. So
tell us about.
Are we back to Papaya?
They are hard to beat, aren't they? They're as they've proven first 2 races. Yeah, it's got to be Lando. I'd love to say Lewis. You imagine the crowd. However popular Yuki is there, I think there'll be more Lewis Ferrari flags, number 44s flown than anything else. But Yuki flag sellers will be having the time of their life this week in Japan.
George would be another quiet third, probably.
George, unbelievable how he does it.
The only trouble is with Suzuka is it's not an overtake. It's always the problem. Because we rage about the Nürburgring. I went there and drove around the Nürburgring. I'm talking about Suzuka. And the drivers always say, God, I'd love to go to Suzuka. And it's such a fantastic... And it is fantastic on your own going for a lap time. But we always have to remember that you can't flip an overtake round. It's like a high-speed Monaco. And it's only literally when you've got better traction out of that silly chicane that you then have a chance plus DRS to get past on the run down to the first corner. If you're equal tyres and equal traction out onto that start-finish straight, it's very unlikely you're going to manage to get round anybody at the bottom of the hill. But,
what's it like to drive around?
It's wonderful, yeah. It's just good. Just so many different corners. That's the brilliance of a circuit that doesn't get, monotonized by 90 degrees or, loads of too many hairpins. It's a shame the hairpin that they've got is after a right-hand kink, which, quite a corner. Me in a Group C car, we were braking well before we turned in. and then there's that it feels like about 100 yards from the turning in on the right-hander before you brake and turn the very high, sharp hairpin. Who was it Japan? Oh no, I've started the name test. Oh no, I've done it again to myself.
Oh no.
Who's the Japanese driver that would overtake Kamui Kobayashi? I think 1 year dive bombed about 2 or 3 times into that very tight hairpin. But you've so got to rely on the guy seeing you coming. That's the trouble with these last-minute moves when you're only braking at 50 yards or 75 yards.
Absolutely. It's the only different when.
I don't like that. So the sort of new from when I raced there, the Degner corner, after the long left as you've finished all the S's up the hill, you've got that double right, which has been created to cut off where we used to go a lot deeper for a single good corner and then come back under the bridge. But now they've chopped that old corner off, and it's a very fast first right, isn't it? Then they're on the curb for about 10 yards, and it's a very slow, sharper right. And so many crashes. Yuki, please be careful. And the number of times you've seen, not that fast, they just outbrake themselves for the second element, and then they get on the rubble, and they just nose straight on the barrier, straight ahead,
I think Yuki's going to be on the erring on the side of caution. That's why I think half a second and 11th is probably right. Ayrton Senna also said, along with you, another great driver, not quite your standard, but not bad. He said Suzuka was his favourite, I believe. I think he said it's just the ultimate test, but it's different now. Modern cars, Formula 1 cars are so much bigger and.
It's another brilliant YouTube video, isn't it? Apart from his Monaco qualifying, his Suzuka qualifying as well is on YouTube. I've seen it several times because you can't believe. And again, that 130R corner, which I never took full throttle in anything, which used to be a lift and then an in. Even back in, because they've shallowed it now because they've given more runoff, and so they're all full throttle through this brilliantly challenging corner. And Senna comes up there and he changes down a gear manually with a little hand, flick of a hand. At the sound of the revs, I think he uses the engine. The only braking he does is the deceleration, and the revs seem to, like all the pistons are going out through the tops of the cylinder heads. But it's just of course, V10s are in the news a lot. Still a lot of people talking about that. Audi have come out and said, well, we will leave. You can't have that. We spent billions on our engines. Whether that will happen in 2030, I don't know. But a lot of people seem to be supporting it, as I am and as you are. And as
I am,
everybody is. We just got to dump. I was raging on about blooming batteries. Who else had batteries? Things going wrong with... I think IndyCar had the battery problem because now they got hybrids, and
WRC, same.
Well, they've given up on them. They've dumped them, luckily.
Exactly.
And BTCC have sensibly dumped them. They're just... I know all the electric people say, oh, you've never heard of your engine breaking down. Well, we know that engines break down. But that's one problem. You don't have to have two flipping problems that you're vying against. I think on the Formula One cars, because they're spending so much money, and each engine manufacturer is spending billions on his hybrids. Now they used to go wrong a lot. In the first 2 or 3 years, the MQR code or something would break because it's revving at 30,000 revs or 300,000 revs or something. But that's the bit that's coming out for next year, the very, very expensive bit that broke. But even so, if you say hybrid, it means carrying around a boot full of batteries. And however reliable the hybrid is, you're still lugging around the extra battery weight. So V10s, lighter, noisier.
V10s for the win. Also in the news, Lando's come out about your favourite show, Drive to Survive, said that it's all fake and he wants it to be more truthful. And good for him to say that, because it is a load of bollocks where they swap down a scene from a completely different Grand Prix to get a reaction. So,
well, Max, they used a picture of Max looking miserable after
Miami
won.
After Lando,
Max said, "I'm one of the best nights out, man." He knew he knew he'd been beaten.
Also, did you see? It was the Kennel GT Endurance Cup season opener, a 4-hour race at Paul Ricard circuit. And there was this huge crash, Sebastian Liggio, and in a Porsche, basically. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, he spiraled out of control.
And the one that came across the curb sideways and then rolled along.
And then on the Armaco. But they're all okay, which is good. And I got one other bit of news.
To flatten the curb. Curb's obviously too
you have any news before I come up with my last bit of news? Because you're gonna love the last bit of news. Okay,
It's
the Geneva Watch Show this week.
Oh,
Used to be the Geneva Car Show, and they're launching a whole bunch of Formula One inspired watches. So watch your space, and you might be able to buy yourself a new Formula One inspired watch.
Inspired.
What does that mean? I don't know. What does that mean? It's big business, isn't it? Look, they're spending 150 million or whatever it is on Tag to be the sponsor now.
I've come up with another question, another competition. Sorry, I missed the second competition. Who's going to qualify highest up, Liam or Isaac? Oh, another competition. Liam or Isaac?
It's the toss of a coin. Oh, it's got to be Isaac. It's got to be.
Oh, well, you agree with me then? That's no fun. Yeah,
it's got to be because he's familiar with everything: the team, the car, everything.
Are you going to? I think I might.
Lawson. He's going to want to prove a point. I know that.
FP1, unfortunately, is at 3:00 in the morning. So FP1 was the most exciting FP1 we've had since the history of FP1s, I reckon, to see how Yuki gets on. And what's the race is at 6 a.m. I think Sunday morning, isn't it? Yeah.
I would be surprised if Yuki will have a spin. I'm pretty sure he'll have a spin, even if it's dry, because he's.
You said he won't crash, and it's pretty hard to spin a Suzuka without crashing. Oh dear. Anyway,
it'd be interesting. I won't be getting up for FP1, but I will be getting up for quali and the race for sure. I can't wait.
We'll finish off next weekend before we go back to what happened last weekend: bikes and NASCARs. Just to say that after you watch the race in the morning, there's not much on even next weekend. There's the British GTs at Donington. The weather looks brilliant, so if you want a brilliant day out, GP3s, Abby Pulling, taking on all the young kids. That'd be fascinating. So it's interesting stuff at Donington this weekend.
Well, funny you should say that, because our very own Nick Ponting, after 20 years away from Ginetta, is racing in Ginetta this weekend, and we're filming it for on the road special. So he'll be there flying a flag for Love Cars. Apparently, it's like incredibly competitive the field. So these Ginetta boys. So we shall see how he gets on. James Mullins,
lots of reasons to go to
racing.
Donington. Wonderful. I keep on reading Donington because underneath Donington is Darlington. So I keep on saying Darlington for Donington. So
Donington, if you haven't been, what an amazing place to go and watch. I love racing there, but what an amazing place to watch, because you can see so much of the track.
Go to Redgate, watch the first couple of Redgate, go down the hill, down the Craner Curse, have a watch down the bottom. It's a walk-around track.
And it's funny when you said about... Sorry, Tiff, you said about going flat out, and the amount of times you go to a track and they say, "Oh, by the end of your first hour, you're going to be flat out through this corner or this sequence," and you say, "No," you go through it the first time and say, "There's no way I'm going flat," and then in no time at all you're there and doing it. And Donington's one of those, down the hill, Craners, amazing.
So there you go, Donington on Sunday afternoon, and then in the evening, of course, there's NASCAR. There's the only two race meetings apart from Formula One internationally. The NASCAR's going to Darlington. And there's just a good story here, because we talked about the number 21, the Josh Berry, the Wood Brothers car. And on this very podcast, was that 3 weeks ago, I said, of course, what was the secret of what was Wood Brothers and Jim Clark have in common? And the story which we told was the fact that the Wood Brothers, who were one of the best pit crews in NASCAR back in the 60s, were employed by Colin Chapman to crew the Lotus that won the Indy 500 in 1965. And literally the next 2 days later, without me knowing about it, the Wood Brothers announced that they're going to paint Josh Berry's car in the same green and yellow colours of Jim Clark's Lotus for this weekend's Darlington NASCAR race.
Please tell us that you listened to this podcast and that you did it off the back of that, because that would be amazing if you did, or your tweet or something.
Doubt it. But watch NASCAR. And I forgot, Darlington's quite a 1.5 mile, I think.
We need to go to a NASCAR and an IndyCar this year.
Be in the pits, be there. But just so going back last weekend, for 3 disappointing international races, we might as well start with NASCAR. I just mentioned it. And they all just drove round and round. It's Martins. I never liked the half miles. I mean, that's quite fun. There's a lot of pushing, shoving, spinning out, people shouting and getting upset. But then there were less yellow flags than normal, which meant it was just they're all spread at 1, 2, 3, 4, spread by a second and a half each. And Denny Hamlin won. And I don't like Denny Hamlin, dirty Denny. But actually, he got a flag. He won. He hasn't run at Martinsville for 10 years or something. He's won last year. And he suddenly unfurled a flag when he stood on the cover saying number 11 against the rest of the world or something. So he knows he gets booed.
Has he got a bit of a chip on his shoulder because of that?
They all boo him, and he gets accused of, he's put several people in the wall, more popular drivers. He's never been that sort of big fan-based type of driver. So anyway, that was at Martinsville. And the rest of it was all about bikes. And even they weren't that good. MotoGP.
Well, it's opened up a bit now, at least, with MotoGP. With
what you mean, apart from the fact the Márquez brothers have finished first and second all season. And in the sprint race, they finished first and second. But the weather had been a bit iffy all weekend. There were some damp patches, and they'd had missed qualifying, they had wet drivers and dry weathers. But on this sprint race, Márquez led out away.
You need to say which Mark. You need to say which Mark.
Marc Márquez. But his teammate Pecco Bagnaia, the former world champion, who used to be the number one Ducati driver, he's getting closer to the Márquezes.
Why is he so far away? I don't get it. They were literally neck and neck. There was nothing between them.
But anyway, Marc left off pole, did about half the lap of COTA, then coming around an adverse Cambridge right-hander, he lost the back end. And it was anyone else would have been spat into a high side. He's up in the air off the saddle, lands on the saddle, drops behind Bagnaia and his brother Alex. And 3 corners later, he's back in the lead. So first of all, his heart rate must have come down. And he recovered it and went back to the lead, and they finished first and second, the Márquezes. But Bagnaia was closer. So we all hope the Grand Prix might be more exciting. And the Grand Prix, it started in chaos. It was this. When I say it wasn't entertaining, it was entertaining in an eventful way because it had been wet. Half the track was wet. So they all turned up on the track with wet tyres on. And all of a sudden, as the klaxon's about to go, Marc Márquez leaps off his pole position wet shod bike and starts running into the pit lane to change to his slick shod bike. You don't change wheels in MotoGP, you do have to go to two. So all of a sudden, there's this little Mark, and there's this lovely shot with Susie Perry's the star picture. And I hope we'll get a close up of her face. Because literally Márquez ran through the gap in the pit wall and ran sort of in front of Susie. And Susie just in this turn of her head was sort of, what the fuck's going on? It was a lovely... But the camera left her so quickly. If anyone managed to get a free phase of Susie's, I'm sure the motorbike boys will be trying to. So Mark's running back to his bike to get out of the track with his wet shod bike. Now, all of a sudden, there was this, you couldn't believe it, because about 5, 6, 7 or 8 riders all abandoned their bikes on the grid and started following Márquez. They're all running down the pit lane in their leathers. And it was so chaotic that in the end, they threw a red flag. So it had to be a full restart, so you could all put whatever tyres you want on for the restart. But to be fair, I mean, a lot of the people that stayed on the grid that had put the dry tyres on, ready for the race, or put wet, so whichever one it was, and they put dry tyres on already, they should have started the race, in most people's opinion, just because the top 10 or 12 riders had run away.
Absolutely, yeah.
So there were a few people pissed off that
I saw that. A bit of controversy. Controversy, you would say. You're posh. Controversy.
But anyway, the race was just normal race. Same, they all started spreading out. Well, this time, Bagnaia managed to get between the Márquezes. So progress for Bagnaia. It was looking like going to be a Márquez result. And all of a sudden, there's Márquez sliding down the road. And he literally, in those COTA turns 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 S's, somewhere in the middle of there, he just ran a bit more over the curb. The curbs were wet. We all know what happens on wet curbs. And down he went.
Lost the front end.
Yeah, just lost the front end. And down he went. Everyone was like shocked.
It just goes to show. It was probably, 4 or 5 inches difference.
Yeah, I know.
And it's just...
But when he's cruising to a win, why, what a mistake to make.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there wasn't much going on. I mean, the VR46 boys were... It was all Ducati.
I don't know anything about bikes, but again, so he went into it. He knew he was going to miss that apex and he was going to be on the curb. So don't start turning. I know it's easy to say now, but why don't you just go straight? Take the medicine, then run off slower speeds.
Well, he's already lent his little body over, hasn't he? He's already lent, committed to the apex, and it just turned into...
Obviously, that's a ridiculous thing for me to say, because obviously he's going to do whatever he can. World's best rider knows what he's doing, and it's so easy to make a comment from your armchair.
Indeed.
Like a numpty.
But it was still all Ducatis. The Hondas are getting closer of any of the manufacturers. They're one of the best improved manufacturers. Pedro Costa, guess what? Fell off his KTM again. It's quite interesting. They pointed out he did it at that stupidly tight turn 1, And Pedro's always had this early turn-in style, which he's developed, which is brilliant for overtaking people and outbraking people because he actually turns in earlier. And then he somehow gets it round the apex using his incredible skills. But the new KTM, it's not, the front's just not doing what he wants it to. And he tries his turn-in early style and down he went. So a bit embarrassing. So eventful MotoGP. See, Moto2, another boring race, although it was brilliant because Jake Dixon was the man who was boring us all. It was quite fun at the end of the race, having gone from pole position to win by about 5 seconds. And he got the microphone out and he shouted, such a great crowd out here. I hope you all enjoyed the race. And I'm thinking, oh, no. But I don't think many of them did. The trouble is at COTA, the little motorbikes on that huge, all the runoff area, big size Grand Prix Formula One track, they do look a bit minuscule when they're on their own. You're not close enough. The spectators, of course, 50 yards back as per safety things. And in fact, I was thinking, the NASCARs, remember they turned left halfway through the turn 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
No, I don't know that.
So they shortened the circuit. They came out halfway down the huge.
What would you prefer to say? Would you prefer to just nod and say yes when I don't really know?
I talked about it on our podcast, which you were, I think, involved in. Therefore, I'm very disappointed. And I know that when they turned left in the middle of the first turn, 2, 3, 4, there was a barrier almost right up against it. So they wider tooled, so maybe it wasn't safe. I think, because if you're a spectator like that on a wide open track, if it increased the laps from 20 to 30, because you've got a third of distance less, you'd see them more often. I'm a big fan. I don't know why people go for 4 mile tracks, really, when, 2.5, 3 is perfect. So that was that. Moto2, Jake, brilliant. Won again, fantastic. David Alonso, our Moto3 superstar from Colombia that's had a slow start, has been pretty fit, qualified 6th, but actually dropped to 14th in the race. Otherwise, they all went round and round. Moto3, even that wasn't exciting. They claimed it was because they had wet drive, qualifying and practice, and therefore the field was more spread out. But the Spaniard, Jose Rueda, won his second out of the 3 races. Scott Ogden, our Scotty boy, had a huge high side in qualifying at the turn 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And bless him, he qualified, I think, 13th because he got a lap time in, but he was on the pace. He was running about 4th or 5th earlier on in the session. But they interviewed on the grid. I'm a bit achy. And he said that sighting lap was a real struggle. I'm thinking, that's just the lap to get onto the grid, not the green flag lap, just to go out of the garage and ride round to the grid. And he said, I'll try and get it, but he quit after. He was running 12th, I think, and he quit. He was in so much pain, obviously, poor lad.
How good's that for Jake Dixon to go back to Moto2, though? So he's I know it's only just start of the season, but 59 points, and then you got all the Spanish boys behind, sort of mid-40s. So, and then it drops down to 30. That's brilliant. I hope that continues. I don't care if it's boring. Jake Dixon, go on, son. Lovely lad as well. Met him, Misano. Have you ever met Jake Dixon?
No,
nice guy.
He's so good at it. He's just a big smiling man. There was one news story of interest on the Moto3s, another child for the future to remember. This kid called Maximo Quiles, if I pronounce, sorry, Spanish, not my best, but Quiles, 17-year-old. He's had lots of history in Red Bull racing, lots of wins. So he's a well-known name as a kid, but he comes to his first Moto Grand Prix, and it was all wet all day, so they had no real dry running. And the last qualifying laps, it just about dried out enough. So I think he had 2 laps in the dry and put it second on the grid. And led away from the start, led several laps and finished 5th overall. So another 17-year-old super child, Maximo Quiles. And that was Moto2. I mean, eventful, but not the real big depth of racing going on. And so the star race was actually Portimão Superbikes, but it was just brilliant racing between 2 riders. And they were so far quicker than anybody else. But it was so brilliant. And it was like, because the Ducati rider, Nicola Bulega, won all 3 in Australia. And of course, Toprak had a crash before he tested in the Australian, broke his little finger or something. And he's had to change the bike setup because he had these special exemptions last year. So he's been struggling to get used to his BMW. But these 2, you couldn't separate them. But Toprak the Ducati's so much quicker down the straights, and Toprak has to get out a big enough lead, and then they all bomb past him, and then he works it all out, and he dives Bond and overtakes back again. But he won the 3 races by 0.067 seconds, 0.055 seconds, then almost got beaten in the 3rd race because he was only 0.195 ahead of Bulega.
That's incredible. So less than a second total, if my maths is correct, for all 3 races.
But the dice, the also thing, the top rank couldn't get off the line as quick as the Ducati. So he was always back 2 or 3 places on the opening lap. I think in the first race, he was down to about 8th. But just the battle between these two was superb. And Bulega on the second race was just on his rear when he's going to go for it. But, Toprak, when he brakes, that Portimão track and down the hill to that turn 1. So he's doing 180, 190 miles on his bike. And he stands on the front wheel, and you can see the chassis. No.
But that hair racing,
the Ducatis by about 3 bike lengths. As in Formula One, you wouldn't be overtaking. He was coming from 3 bike lengths behind.
That's hair racing. But when you see the bike guys in the wet, not like soaking wet, but when it's wet, and when you see them, then it just accentuates all those movements, and you see the braking. They're moving. I can't believe you can do that on 2 wheels. The movement they get, and they're doing everything you do in a car with understeer, oversteer. They're doing it on 2 wheels.
The only trouble, which was fantastic racing, was the commentary. And yet again, I don't know if it's just me. I know we all think Crofty shouts a little, but these two. James Toseland was the expert. He's brilliant, James, wonderfully eloquent, talking about things. And the commentator was Greg Haynes, I think it is. But they just shouted, both of them. And, I always say that, you don't want a radio commentary if you've got the pictures. You've got the pictures.
Let the pictures do the talking.
And as soon as Greg Haynes stopped his run, the most incredibly exciting, this is brilliant, he's down there, this is the most fantastic. And he breathed, and Toseland was straight in. Got the chassis out, look how sideways it is, look at that. I'm watching it. And I don't think they ever stopped talking throughout the whole race. And it's this sort of, everything was brilliant, huge, fantastic. Well, I think it was Greg Haynes said they were coming out on the grid, on which race it was. And the stands are getting filled up and packed out. They're pouring in. And in the shot, we could see this empty grandstand. But they did the correct, I think it was James correcting Greg, or the other way around. He just said, not in the grandstands, but in the hospitality. They're pouring in above the pits. Well, above the pits, probably, 2,000 people, and it's full up. It's unfortunate that Aragon, I don't know who paid for that track, because it's a bit in the middle of nowhere, in the southwest corner of Portugal. And around the last corners, huge grandstands everywhere, banked around the circuit. Who they were ever expecting to go there, unless they were hoping to get a Formula One Grand Prix. So sadly, every corner they went around, you just see huge empty grandstands, which probably weren't even open. Maybe they only opened. I think the main grandstand down the straight, there's quite a few people. They hide up in the top under the sunshade. So there's nobody in the front half of the grandstand. But anyway, it wasn't packed and huge. But it was brilliant. But I was getting annoyed by them keep on telling me it was brilliant. I can make my own mind up. I'm watching this fantastic duel. Just breathe.
What do other people think? Let us know in the comments. You have to do it on YouTube. But
I don't blame the commentators, because I think the producers, directors,
Of course it is.
Telling, because I always tell this story every time, because with Murray Walker, when we talked a bit too much, I always remember in the air, the director would say, stop the talking, let the pictures do the talking, stop, ease back. You've just got to let the pictures breathe.
What did you do with Murray? You did BBC, BTCC?
No, I did Formula Ford Festival Live, Formula 3, Formula 2, everything.
Amazing.
James Hunt wouldn't do Formula 2, couldn't be asked, but he was the Grand Prix commentator in those days. So I'd do all the national races, Formula 2 internationals that came to England, and then we did the rally cross, and BTCC was towards the end, really, and by then it was post-recorded, so it was done as a highlights.
Did you ever do interviews, or just the commentary?
No, just up in the box.
Who was the biggest star that you saw?
We didn't do interviews in Formula 2 days. We didn't. No, who's
the biggest star you saw racing in Formula 2 in the UK back in the day?
Well, all of them, the Keke Rosbergs and can't remember all the names now. No, don't. Why you suddenly challenge me? I can't remember names, and now you come out right at the end of the podcast and made me try to remember names.
Who was the most famous person who sat next to on the grid and looked over and
Emerson Fittipaldi on the grid.
What
So I'm
Grand
sorry.
Prix was that?
I'm sorry,
What Grand Prix was that?
Zolder, Belgian Grand Prix, 1980.
Absolutely amazing. How many people can say they've done that? That must be incredible. Looking at Emerson Fittipaldi, thinking, "What am I doing here?"
Anyway, I've got to go to the doctors. I've got to get me medical now for my 50. How many licenses have I had? How many from age 17? No,
Are you
18.
allowed to say your race license number? I don't think it matters, does it? Are you allowed to say your
No,
race
I'm number 42. I've got a cherished number.
How cool is that? Number 42 of
So how many
Motorsport
licenses
UK.
have I had now? 60 licenses? No,
I'm
not that many.
34,000 and something. So that's a good sign.
I'm going to get my 54th racing license. If I pass the medical.
Long may that continue, Tiff. Long may that continue.
All right, Paul.
On that note, we'll see you next week.
We always look for
you're talking to everyone now. We're still recording. This isn't
answers will be out. Cheerio. Next week.
See you next week.
Yuki crashed. Did he crash? Did he not? Who out qualified who? The tension mounts.